I've got one of these things going on where people are trying to teach me something. And they're trying to teach me something that would be such a backward step in my understanding of the world that I couldn't live. I couldn't live with the upgrade that certain people are trying to pass to me. Now, this is a tweet by James Lindsay that I think 99% of people aren't even equipped to deal with. I see it and I'm like, well done, James. I've done this before. I know this trick. I see this. It reminds me of a day when I was having a chat with a chap who used to be a mate of mine. I don't talk to him anymore. I'm not falling out with him. I'm just indifferent. If he wants to reach out to me at any stage, he knows where I am. And that'd be Davis Arini. I once put it to him, who, let's have it right, used to think he was quite a smart kid. Yeah? I put it to him once, I'm like, no, mate, you're actually quite stupid. What? It's like, yes, you can be manipulated and controlled with simple buzzwords. You are a victim of mind control. And he's like, what do you mean? And I just said, Jews. And then he went on this huge rant. Oh, don't get me started on Jews. Bam, bada, 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 bam. And he's into conspiracy territory. He's completely lost sight of what I said, which was you can be controlled with buzzwords. I can say just a single word and it send you into like hysterics. And then I did it, and then by the time he'd finished ranting, he'd forgotten what I'd said before I said Jews. Why did you bring up this topic? And I'm also reminded of a rather good Sparks line or lyric that goes, no use lecturing them or threatening them. They will just say, who are you? Right there? Wisdom. So it's like we've had a round two of it where I've said it again at a later date and said Muslims, and he's gone pow and starts ranting like Alex Jones. And I'm like, until you can see past that, until you can think your way through that, you're always going to be a slave to people who use these buzzwords. It will bring on a highly emotional reaction, which is stop you from thinking. You'll in essence go into a skit or a spiel or immediately start to act out. Wasn't too many months after that, Davis fell under the influence of some woman claiming to be a kind of high priestess of hell, she called herself. She was a disciple of Odin, like the Nazis, who claimed herself to have the ability to cast spells on people, send demons to attack, put curses on people. And then he brought her into his circle of friends. She managed to upset his friends, and they told her what they thought of her, stamping down her authority as, you will respect my high priest, wizard, witch pronouns, and put a curse. But use Davis to do it. Use Davis to put a curse on, it was John Steele? It's not his real name, but John Steele. To put a curse on him. You're in real trouble. You need to watch your back. She'll put a curse on you. She'll send demons to attack you. And it's the same guy. And he'd be, okay, so I had a conversation with him a little bit later. I wanted to actually tear a massive strip off him. I set about to give him a bit of a stuffing, a bollocking. When him and it was Jordan Owen, who it turns out, you probably don't remember Jordan Owen. It's to do with the old, the old internet scandal, which was a documentary being made that was crowdfunded called The Sarkeesian Effect. And Jordan's not actually a bad guy. I had some issues with Jordan, and eventually I made friends with him. I give him a bit of a snarky remark, because him and Davis are people who I'm disappointed with. I don't hate them. I haven't got a problem with. I'm disappointed with them. And it's like, being disappointed with someone's actually worse than hating them. Because you've let someone down, it's real. There's those of us who put money in the pot for the Sarkeesian effect and trusted these guys to be able to do it, because on the surface of it, they seemed like smart, thoughtful people. And it turns out they had absolutely massive gaping flaws where they were hypocrites, the pair of them. And I eventually, I called Jordan on Facebook and had a chat with him for about an hour, and I think he's a great guy. He's a nice lad, a genuinely nice person. But the problem with him was he was in his own way a bit of a degenerate. Fantastic musician. It's like all the time you spent on the internet trying to be a philosopher. It's like if you'd have tried to be a musician, you'd have got somewhere, mate, because your music's excellent. No, like St. Davis, storyteller, good at it, should have stuck at it, should never have moved out of his lane and into philosophy, because he's just not very good at it, because he fails basic tests. I mean, that I got in contact with him because I wanted to give him a stuffing. I wanted to tear a strip off him. Why? Because he and Jordan were looking for people to interview for this Sarkeesian effect. And one of the people that they interviewed was a porn star called Mercedes Carrera. And Jordan was sent to go and interview her in her home, which also doubles as her webcam studio. And it'd be that this is one of the most dangerous and deceitful people in the world. And it was at that time exposed that I don't know if she went to jail in the end, but she was arrested because she'd corrupted her own daughter. She'd had her own daughter take part in sex games with her new husband, and her old husband found out about it from the little girl telling her, and then the little girl going on to tell the police as to what she'd seen and what she knew about. It's like, this little girl's been raised in a porn studio. So it's like, I'm like, your failure as a judge of character means that if your film had have succeeded, you'd forever have been associated with this supremely evil, bullshitting whore. So I wanted to tear a strip out of him. I wanted to have a serious word with him. I was like, do you see where you went wrong here? Do you see where you and Jordan have got these character flaws where it's a matter of, you're a pair of simps. In what way are you broken as to where you thought that was a good idea? I wanted to have a serious word with him. This be nearly 10 years ago now. This be a thing. It's like that Mercedes Carrera person. She got herself on a Gab Sad's podcast, and it's like, I got doubts about him. She did the rounds of all these alt-right guys, and they're all like, oh, she's really intelligent. Listening to a load of fucking lies from a whore, claiming to have been an aerospace engineer. Really? Really? Giving someone the maximum benefit of the doubt because they say they're on your side. And having this conversation with Davis, I wasn't the only person in on the conversation. The witch of hell, or the priestess of hell, was in the conversation as well. And it's like, about 40 minutes later, she was no longer someone who professed to be able to cast magic spells on friends of mine. She'd retired. Why? Because if she's a fucking magician, well, so am I. I'm just so much better at it than her. And when I do it, it fucking works. Well, it worked on her because she believes it to be true. Davis had fallen in with a cult under a witch who claimed to be able to cast spells on people and put curses on people. And she believed that she could. And her idea of a magic spell is you wouldn't talk to your mother like that, would you? Defending her witch pronouns like a trans activist. So just find magical thinking, and then you have it later as the words, what? I have to give up being a high priestess of hell and a sorcerer and a witch? Yes, you do. Why? Because I'm so much better at it than you. It's like, you'll remember my Gomji bar, bitch. I tore it to pieces. Didn't know what her craft actually was and how it works. Where it's a matter of scramble someone's brain, get them hyper emotional, fill them with adrenaline, get them raging. And then in doing all that and getting all them juices flowing, make them terribly depressed. But have your words ringing in their fucking ears. Like, do you think you can possess people? Yes. Do you think you can cast spells on them? Yes. It's like, you'll never forget this day when I've torn you apart, will you? When I've made you really, really angry, you'll never forget this day. And it's like, I've just given you a lesson and now it's done. You were a shit witch. You do not understand your craft. Who are you? Who trained you? Who trained me? It'd be a matter of, I'm from Rochdale and I'm kind of Irish. And it'd be a matter of, they teach us this game at the teat. We call it the crack. You can't play it. You've no experience at it. You don't know what lesser magic is to be someone who claims to wield it. So, see, all that comes out from reading this and the way that it's come to me. And then you look at the Twitter and the number of people who've retweeted this and said, like, that fucking idiot, Margoth, Geordie. He's like that. Rock solid, thick as shit. But sits there and in his little echo chamber and waxes lyrical. There's loads do it. It's like I do it myself, but I'm always open to have a debate. But everyone runs from me. Why? Because they might lose something they need talking to me. They might lose something. So let's have a look at this. Right, the original is from A. Anyone know the significance of calling yourself A? Well, A is an older symbol than the letter A. It's a pyramid with the capstone attached. So if you call yourself A, it suggests that you are a complete human being. That you are one under God. That's the symbolism of the pyramids. As to where there's a reason why the capstone's missing. Because you ain't there yet. You can't see it. But those who brandish A, they often know. I pointed out videos from years ago. Stanley Kubrick knew about it. That's why he had such a good eye for what was real. That's why his films are a little bit, let's say, off-kilter. Or really sort of almost in your face, nailed on, trying to teach you something. You either get the message or you don't. But every Stanley Kubrick film, it would be a Stanley Kubrick film. Always. You never see the word Stanley. You never see Stanley Kubrick with an A in front of it. And that was him telling you who he was in plain sight. I see everything. My eye, my all-seeing eye sees all. Well, it says here, a bunch of Palestine supporters found out that Adam, so-and-so, supported Israel and spammed his obituary with comments saying they're glad he's dead and hope he's in hell. Bunch of horrible little demons. James seizes upon this and, in his own way, casts a spell and no one gets it. Sooner or later, we're going to have to say, enough is enough with the Israel hate coming from woke left and right. I get that you're afraid. But this is an extremely easy test of moral courage. Far too many people are failing. I got this sent to me saying, he works for Israel. He's Mossad. He supports Israel. He's paid for by the Israelis. This is Jewish propaganda. It's like, yeah, they nailed Jesus up, didn't they, those Pharisees? Jewish people didn't kill Jesus. The Pharisees did. Who were the Pharisees? Those who did not understand that statement as not being a position, as being a statement. In that statement, where does James say that he's an Israeli asset? Nowhere. He says sooner or later we're going to have to say enough is enough with the Israel hate coming from the woke left and right. I get that you're afraid, but this is an extremely easy test of moral courage. Far too many people are failing. Right? Remember the tale about Irini? Just said to him, Jews. And he just goes, boom! Starts ranting. Forgets what triggered it. Forgets. Goes off on a rant. Has already made his mind up. Now, if you can't think your way past that statement or actually take it without an emotional reaction, you got a problem. That's the limit of your intellect. As soon as it hits the wall of what is ancient scapegoat magic, the magic that's used to control people, which is the essence of this woke right, they're reactionary. The left are reactionary too. And it'd be a matter of hatred. Say the word and suddenly the beast appears. And when the beast appeared, you talk to the beast and the beast isn't listening to you. There's no point lecturing them or threatening them. They will just say, who are you? So that's exactly what's happened here. James is an Israeli asset or a Jew plant. His response to this, where everyone's piled in saying, no, you've proved it, you've admitted it. So I've admitted nothing. You've imagined it based on your little monster now being out to play. I get lectured off people who, in recent times, I've been lectured off people who don't use their real names, as to say there's kind of something wrong with me because I don't hate Jews. Truth be told, I don't hate any collective group of people. I detest some individuals, but hey, that's it's all on a case-by-case basis. But you throw something like Jews at me, and it's a matter of, yeah, okay, Jews, it's just a word. It doesn't have any power. It doesn't cause any kind of reaction. You throw the word Muslim at me, and you don't get a reaction from me. So what we're talking about? Are we talking about individuals? Are we talking about cults? Are we talking about sects? Are we talking about teachings? Are we talking about history? Are we talking about political Islam? Are we talking about orthodox sort of religious Islam? Are we talking about good Muslims who practice? Or are we talking about bad Muslims who are hypocrites? What are we fucking talking about? It's too vague or big a tent for me to be able to say, hey, yes, you're right. Down with those Jews. Down with those Muslims. The buzzword doesn't work on me. Now, the buzzword shouldn't work on you either. That's what he's pointing to. If you can't see past what is like an ancient mystique, that's what it is. It's a magic spell, a very old magic spell that seems to work on all kinds of people. Suddenly you stop thinking and you start blaming, and in blame and hatred think you've found the answer, but all you've found is blame and hatred. If these people who come at James were actually Christian, they would recognize that in that hatred they sin, and they would repent the hatred. But they can't do that. They don't even know what it fucking means. They don't know what it means. They don't know what it means to repent. And they can't stand away from it as to say, I've got no legitimate reason from my own perspective of life, to detest Jews or detest Muslims. I've got no legitimate reason. This is something that's been conditioned. This is something that's been programmed, and I can't see past it, because it's just exactly the same as the brainwashing they give to Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses teach people, after they've found you and you don't know shit and you're down and you're broken and you're emotionally weak, they'll come along and they'll treat you like a human being, and they'll bring you into their circle and they will love bomb the shit out of you, and they'll all be pleased to meet you, and they'll try to convince you that we're living in the end times, and then you'll brainwash yourself. Because part of their conditioning is to send people knocking on doors to spread the word of Jesus Christ. And their leader, whoever the little cult leader is, will tell them, you can tell it's the end time because you will go to the people and speak the word of the Lord, and they will tell you to go fuck yourself and slam doors in your faces. So when the Jehovah's Witnesses come round and want to talk to you about Jesus, if you slam the door in their faces, you are doing the work of the cult leader. You are conditioning them. They're using the world as a stage. So every time you see an earthquake, a storm, a natural disaster of any kind, or else an atrocity, a war breakout, a massacre, these are all signs of the end times. These all reaffirm that you're in the right clique, understanding that the end is nigh. And the world's always going to end tomorrow. And while you're trapped in that place, you're trapped in the future at the expense of the present. Anyone who's a member of a cult, you be a member of the Andrew Tate cult, you are trapped in the future at the expense of the present, and they're taking money out of your pocket right now and offering you a future. Putting you into like a time travel mode where you're looking 10 years down the line when no one's any good at that. So you have to be led. That's where the one-eyed man is king, because no one's good at projecting into the future. No one is good at it. So you need to be led, and the guy who's leading, the guy who finds himself leading you, is as blind as you, but he can tell a tale. He's the man with the plan. It's black and white thinking. It's part of narcissism. It's black and white thinking. The answer can only be 1 or 0. It's binary thinking. To think that that's an admission by James Lee, somehow an Israeli agent, is for you to completely miss the point. That's a shit test, as he says. I get that you're afraid, but this is an extremely easy test of moral courage. Far too many people are failing. An overgeneralization, a vague platitude that elicits a hyper-emotional reaction. Now, it's not easy to make people better, but it's really, really easy to make them worse. And in that state of worse, they're infinitely controllable. It's where the populists of the, let's say, alt-right, they will endlessly give you the same story of things like Asian grooming gangs. See, that's the thing as well, grooming gangs. To say grooming gangs is, again, to elicit from a certain people who would call themselves of the right a hyper-emotional reaction where it's a matter of, it's a topic you could talk about for days. And it's a dirty business that you wouldn't want to know the truth of it. Why? Because the truth will hurt you. The truth will set you free, but it will also hurt you. It will also terrify you. It will also horrify you, but it's got absolutely nothing to do with Muslims and all to do with monsters, criminals, perverts, degenerates. All these places, all these people, that those who set themselves up on the political left and right pretend do not exist. The criminal elements of this world who understand this notion, who would reach for the tactics of the buzzword and division and reactionaries, either they get it or they don't. They're either deliberately controlling you or they're puppets who have decided to get their own flock without knowing all of the details. You start putting out buzzwords, you start putting out hate, and suddenly you can find yourself a following of other people who are as dumb and stupid as you are, and they will follow you because you're the one who's got the guts to speak up. It's a shit test. Quite a good example of a use of what we would call higher magic. James Lindsay, I always found that he had potential. He was the smartest person who was actually onto what was going on with the magical thinking. It was like, for years I actually tried to contact him and said, have you considered that there's some magical side of this, that there's some Gnostic side of this, as to where those who know they control a crowd with simple buzzwords that go bang, and suddenly they're not thinking anymore, and all of a sudden they're full of emotion and adrenaline, and it'd be I didn't actually manage to get through to James, and if I had, he wouldn't have believed me. He had to find out for himself that magic words actually work. You know, there's words that we're not allowed to say. I couldn't say in this video because I'd say it, the words, and YouTube would probably just not allow the video out. And people would say, you can't say that. You've proven yourself racist using that word. And people tell me there are no such things as magic words. The use of this said word to certain people will stop them from thinking and elicit usually an angry or violent reaction from them, because they fall under this umbrella too of being damaged and broken and unable to see past the buzzword, unable to shake the emotion, where they don't think, they react in like a millisecond, in a unit of time that can't be measured. It's so short. There'll be, you called me what? Tell me there's no such thing as magic words. Stop someone from thinking, turn them into something that's altogether manageable, because hey, the state and those who might want to control us, they understand violence. They've given themselves a monopoly. So if you want to reach for anger and violence, they can deal with that. That's something they've got, they anticipate it. They turn up with batons and riot shields. They can anticipate violence. They can deal with violence. They can't deal with people who can avoid these bullets and arrows and missiles and mines of magic words and wordplay. Those who they have no effect on, who can't be drawn into violence, governments and authorities and tyrannies cannot deal with them. They tend to kill them. But they don't kill them. They get their minions to do it. The Pharisees start to spread tales about the individual who said, don't be afraid, you're being tricked. They murder them. No one understands the story of how Jesus ended up nailed up. James has just illustrated it by playing the part of his brother, Jesus. Your brother, Jesus. There is no mystery to that man. No mystery. He was your brother and not your God. Like, how can you prove that, John? It's like, okay, he said it himself many times, but The most famous method of telling this story is the prayer that Jesus gave. How do we pray? How do we best pray, Jesus? And he taught them a prayer. And the prayer is called Our Father. Not my Father. Our Father. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Our Father. Not my Father. Not worship me and I'll pass any interesting snippets onto the Almighty. No. We are all children of God. And we are all subject to these forces as to where God has been tricked with words because you're dumb. You can't fail but to have a hyper-sensitive emotional reaction to certain buzzwords. Buzzwords beginning with N, buzzwords beginning with J, buzzwords beginning with M. And you can be controlled. The oldest magic in the world is the mystique behind which many Jews in history who've been involved in criminal enterprise have been allowed to hide. You're not talking about Jews, you're talking about criminals, you're talking about pimps, you're talking about cult leaders, you're talking about fraudsters. Why don't we call them by their correct name? Why don't we say what they are? Why don't we judge them for their acts and deeds as individuals as opposed to races and nations? I do from time to time because I think it's funny. Label and tar all Scousers with the same brush because it's funny, because it's absurd. It's an absurd comedy. Fucking thieving Scouse bastards. Like Margoth who passed this on, like fucking Geordies. And then talk about how Geordies are difficult to understand in that way, very much like gypsies. They're talking in code. They're talking around you and above you and around you. And would you not understanding them is your fault and not theirs. I swear you will find bigotry everywhere. And the best way of testing for it is to make an overgeneralized statement. What about them Jews, eh? The word has a subjective meaning to absolutely everyone, but fundamentally it's too big a word to just throw around willy-nilly, so therefore it's quite funny that it actually works as a magic word. It's like, if you can't get past the most ancient form of magic, that's the limit of your intelligence, and that's the end of your learning. That's the end of you learning. You've reached your intellectual level. You are a slave. You will bend the knee to authority. When someone with a big enough platform comes along and has some kind of voice of authority, people say to me, I'll say, you are dumb as shit. You don't understand some very, very basic axioms of being human even. And they'll say, you've only got 4,000 subscribers, you can't be so great, can you? It's like, am I someone who's ever sought attention like that? No. I've ever made any kind of effort towards being big, being a hit, building up my channel? No. But they will judge because that's what they hold as being sacred. That, no, you're not worth dealing with until you've got 10,000 subscribers. Is something that's been absolutely endemic in the clicks of YouTube for as long as it's been around. You can't be up to much. You don't know anything because you're too small. And it's like, you were small once, and did you regard yourself as being inept because you at one time started on 1 subscriber like everyone else did? And the answer is no, they don't see that. We have a problem with narcissism on the right and on the left. It's got to it as a matter of it's like Manchester United against Manchester City. Both are football teams. They just wear a different kit, have a different manager, but they're all playing football. They're both playing the same sport. They're both playing the same game. It's like until you understand that you can be divided and you can be conquered. James Lindsay is trying to do everyone a favour by breaking them free of this reactionary magical thinking, where I can say one word and have 600 words come back at me and just be sat there just grinning. It's like you can be played like a fiddle forever and you're never going to learn. You're never going to learn to differentiate the individual from the group, because it suits you to be angry and it suits you to hate. Being angry and hating may be in some way cathartic to make you feel better about your own lot in life. You failed to learn a basic lesson that will get you everywhere in life. Gratitude for what you've got, as opposed to anger for what you've missed out on or what you don't have. Hand in hand with poverty comes black and white thinking and narcissism. The kid who had nothing but, attention. Nothing but attention. Be jealous of the kid who's got all the toys because his parents don't give him any attention at all. And they inevitably all end up in the same place. Starved of something that they thought was essential that really wasn't. The kid who got the attention over the presents, he had the better deal.